In 1990, an article appeared in Mark Chervinsky's Strange magazine, issue 6, page 5. A woman by the name of Virginia Staples had provided an account of a sighting of a bizarre creature that she had while staying at an apartment on Denny Street in Bremerton, Washington. The creature she described is a first in Fortean literature. Even after a lengthy search, I simply could not find another case involving a similarly described creature anywhere. Chervinsky had received a message on his answering machine from Virginia, in which she went over her encounter in detail. He transcribed the account, which appeared in his magazine and on his website. Author Mike Dash also reproduced the transcription in his 2000 book, Borderlands, though he mistakenly claimed that Virginia placed the call in 1995, which was some 5 years after her transcribed call first appeared in Chervinsky's magazine. Virginia Staples described the building in which she lived back in 1948, when the incident occurred, as having a, quote, gigantically huge basement, one with holes in the walls, which, according to the building manager, led out to the area's waterways. Bremerton was surrounded by water on 3 sides. She noted that they were large, old apartment houses situated close together, and all of them had basements. She also indicated that in the basement of her building, the manager had set up a washer, a washtub, and clotheslines for the tenants to use. On this particular day, she was downstairs alone doing her laundry when she began to feel like she was being watched. I had gotten my clothes all hung up, but I kept feeling that someone was staring at me or looking at me, and it was such a creepy feeling. I finally turned around and looked toward the back of the basement and froze. I was so scared I can still feel it. I couldn't move. In one of the huge holes in the basement, there stood this huge thing. According to Chervinsky's transcribed notes, at this point in the call, Virginia broke down in tears. The trauma of the event still lingered even some 40 years later, and it was there on tape for him to hear. She eventually continued, "It was horrible. I stand 5 foot tall, and this creature was as tall as I was. It had a bright orange-colored body, and little spidery thin legs, and an antenna on its head that kept moving back and in and out." She claims that the creature suddenly began to move towards her, at which point she backed out of the basement and ran upstairs to her apartment. She was so frightened that she began packing her clothes and quickly left the building, never to return. Her cousin, who lived in Seattle, agreed to let her move in until she could find another place of her own. Virginia Staples claims that for many years after the sighting, she suffered from terrible nightmares. She claims that sometime after, she had gone to an aquarium looking for something that matched what she saw that day. The closest thing she could find was, quote, her words, a little tiny shrimp. So essentially what she is saying is that she encountered a 5 foot tall shrimp that day in the basement that advanced in her direction. Mike Dash, in his book Borderlands, attempted to offer some explanations for her sighting. He believed that she may have hallucinated the entity, or that maybe she had been influenced by sci-fi movies that were very popular in the late 1940s. He also believed that, given the passage of time, that she may have unintentionally added certain aspects to the story. She convinced herself that a shadow in a passageway was a giant shrimp-like creature. Dash, for his part, seemed open to the stories he featured in his book. He pretty much just laid them out and then let the readers decide how they felt about the story, and the truthfulness of the tellers. But with this case, he seemed eager to dismiss it, maybe because it was difficult for him to personally accept that people are seeing all sorts of weird creatures, even if this specific creature was a first of its kind. Mike Dash summed up his thoughts on Virginia's encounter this way: "I have no doubt that it did happen, at least as far as Virginia Staples is concerned. The real question is what it was. There can be little doubt that the incident made a strong impression on the witness's mind, one so profound, in fact, that a half a century later, it was still one of the defining moments of her life. Staples herself is evidently convinced that the creature she saw was in some way real, either a flesh and blood monster, possibly one that had made its way up from the sea through a secret passageway she describes, or a paranormal entity of some description. A monster from another dimension, perhaps, or a being from the depths of hell."